Is AFL Live 2 the worst AFL game ever made? It's definitely close. But we're going to talk about all of that in this new kind of mini podcast video where I go back and look at all the old AFL games in anticipation of the release of AFL 23 this season. So I remember back prior to the release of this game and the excitement and the hype that was, building after about 2 years prior, we got Big Ant's AFL Live 1. And part of the promise of that game was that it was a foundation to be built off of in future games. Everyone was pitching ideas, everyone knew what they wanted to see, because we all loved AFL Live 1. But what we didn't know was behind the scenes, there was all this kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, maybe drama or whatever that was happening where agreements couldn't be met, True Blue didn't want to pay the money that Big Ant said needed to be invested, but it really was a unique situation. But then as time went on, you started to just see cracks starting to form. Some warning signs were showing. No one was really talking about Live 2. Big Ant, who had been, hugely involved prior to the release of Live 1, they weren't really present prior to Live 2's release. There was no community engagement. Big Ant were nowhere to be seen. And then out of nowhere, True Blue announced AFL Live 2. But then we started to put the pieces together. And if you go back to the Big Footy forums and you check out the thread for AFL Live 2, you can kind of see this happening in real time in the first few posts as the excitement turns to curiosity and questioning, and then Big Ant themselves coming out and saying that no, they aren't involved, they're not going to be developing this one, and everyone was shattered. But then the weirdness continued from True Blue, because obviously, as we know now, Wicked Witch were the developers behind that game, but for whatever reason True Blue didn't really want to announce Wicked Witch as the developer. Now, why that was, we still don't really know. Obviously, Wicked Witch had not had the best track record of releasing AFL games. They'd done AFL Challenge on the PSP and they'd done AFL for the Wii back in 2011, but those were not considered very good games. So whether this was True Blue trying to, damage control, and because everyone loved Big Ant, what we found out, I think, since as well, is that Wicked Witch were not given much time to work on this game. They were given about something like 6 months to turn their Wii game into something that could fit on the PS3 and 360, and they weren't given much money to do it because, from what it seems, this was really like a last minute rush job from True Blue just to try and get a game out there after things kind of fell through with Big Ant. There was an IGN article somewhere online from memory where IGN basically asked True Blue straight out, who is the developer? And True Blue said that they were developing the game. That didn't make any sense. We were like, well, is this a new studio just made for this game, or what's going on? And this kind of continued for a while until eventually Wicked Witch were unveiled as the developer of this game. And part of me, from my memory, think that there was a time when we first played the game where Wicked Witch's logo didn't even show up anywhere in the game. They just were not being credited for it. But it was a really interesting situation and scenario, and just very weird from True Blue. So let's actually talk about the game itself now. This game is so bad. Look, I don't entirely blame Wicked Witch for that, because like I said, it doesn't sound like they were given much time or money to work on this. And I will say, some people won't agree, but I will say that I think Wicked Witch did redeem themselves a little bit with EVO 1 and 2, but Live 2 in and of itself just isn't good. The gameplay is clunky and messy, the animations are so awkward, and the movement of the players, just every single movement is just awkward and hard to control. And it's one of those games where you really have to fight the game to make a player do what you want them to do. I remember when the game came out, I was quite the kind of optimist kind of person, like the game came out and I realized, oh, this is all we've got and I just want a new AFL game. So I kind of played it and was like, hey, this is not so bad, it's okay, there's some good stuff here maybe. Now in hindsight, I'm willing to actually be honest and say this game is just terrible. Graphically, it does not look good. The commentary, it's Dennis Cometti doing his best, and a lot of us have fond memories of the PS2 games, but they're just making him recycle the same lines from the PS2 games. And to be honest, and to be fair, that was a problem even in Live 1, they did the same thing. I will say that Tom Harley is an addition to the commentary team in this game, and I think he actually does an okay job. Interesting as well that he's one of the few secondary commentators in an AFL game to actually also do play-by-play, which is interesting and different, and I don't think he does a terrible job at it. The crowd sounds are just this weird one sound that they've just got on a loop, and you can almost hear the sound repeating. The umpire's whistle sound It's a horrendous screeching noise. After every goal they would blow the whistle, which doesn't happen. And then you've got the umpire actually calling out free kicks and stuff like that, which I don't mind. That's something that happens obviously in the live broadcasts of the games. You can hear the umpires, they're mic'd up. The voice actor, whoever they got for the umpire, is just terrible. I mean, he sounds like your local meth head that's yelling. It does not sound at all like an AFL umpire. And it's funny, playing back and watching this game, watching footage of this game nowadays, the thought I kind of had was AFL Live 2 is kind of like, what would the PS2 games, what would those games have been like if they had just continued on into the PS3 and 360 generation? One of the big additions that was maybe, I guess, a positive in this game. We now had a kind of coaching mode where you can manage a team for like 10 or 15 years or however many it was, which was a nice addition. We didn't have that in Live 1. Online multiplayer was a big thing for the first time in AFL games with Live 1. Now, online multiplayer is back, of course, in Live 2. The only problem is no one was actually playing the game. Playing this game, it just wasn't the same joy you had playing Live 1 online. Like, those are some of the best contests you'd ever had. This gameplay wasn't capable of producing those kind of high quality contests. Now, is this the worst AFL game ever made? No, I don't think it is. Mainly because there's one in particular that I'm thinking of that is worse than this. Also, it happens to be developed by Wicked Witch. That one was really bad. Live 2 is definitely one of the worst games we've ever got. It's definitely in the lower ranks of some of the AFL games we've played. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Maybe you're the one person who actually likes this game. Maybe you have some really fond memories of it. No one else does, but you might be the one person who does. Let's all share our memories of this weirdly disastrous game. Until next time, guys, I'll see you later.